About 20 years ago, I was kidnapped. This is the story of how I escaped. I was backpacking in Morocco, and I put my trust in this guy called Sharif, and he took me to this quiet part of town where suddenly I was bustled into the backseat of a car by a bunch of guys with knives and guns. So for the rest of that day, they took me all around town in trying to get me to take money out of these ATM machines. Now, I don't know whether I got my PIN number wrong because I was freaking terrified, or maybe there was no money in the account, but it just wasn't working, and they were getting more and more frustrated and more angry with me. So at some point, they convinced me to call my family back home in Australia. So I tried to call my parents, but it was in the middle of the night, so that didn't work out. As the day wore on, my kidnappers got more and more frustrated. They weren't able to get any money out of me. So we finished the day at an abandoned hotel, and I was put in my room and I was terrified. Now, as the night went on, couldn't sleep, of course, I was desperately thirsty. I looked and I noticed that there was my backpack on my floor with me. You'd think that someone would have cut it open or seen what's inside or rifled through it, but no one had touched my backpack. And suddenly I remembered something that my mother had once said to me. Fear, in most instances, is an acronym. It stands for false evidence appearing real. And it suddenly occurred to me that at no point had I been physically harmed. At no point had anyone made a direct threat. And I suddenly thought maybe the consequences for harming a tourist are very, very high. But however, the consequences for bullying someone into giving you their money are not that high. So I went and I got my bag and I took one small step. Very important thing in business to know that when you're stuck in a place of inaction, you need to find a way to create some momentum. Momentum creates momentum. So I took one small step and I picked up my bag and I took one small step to the door. And I got to the door and I turned the handle, which was terrifying, but I did it. And the handle turned and the door was not locked. I went through the door. And on the other side of the door, there was this young man with a rifle across his knees. And he looked up like he was busted, because he was busted napping. And the more that I looked, the more I noticed that the rifle didn't actually seem real. He just looked like a kid with a toy gun across his lap. Now, I don't know if it was real or not, but I remembered that advice, false evidence appearing real. So I stared at the guy as if like to say, stop me, mofo. Walked past him, down the corridor, down the stairs, down to the street, and fortunately I could see the ocean. So I walked to the port, jumped on a ferry, and got the hell out of Tangiers. Went to a place called San Sebastian in northern Spain, the first place I felt safe, and then drunk myself into a stupor. Anyway, the moral of this story is, even in the direst of situations, most of the time, fear is false evidence appearing real. When you find yourself stuck in a place of inaction, the smartest thing that you can do is take one small step, because that one small step is going to lead to a second step, and before you know it, you've created momentum. And momentum creates momentum, and that's how you get through hard times.